What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the iOS Dev Podcast. In this episode, I have Kilo Loco with me here today.
What's going on,
Hey,
everybody?
Kilo. For the people who don't know, Kilo, he's been an iOS developer for how many years now?
8.
Eight.
Since like 2015. So
Yeah, eight.
I've
And
been.
you might have seen him. He has a pretty big YouTube channel, and also he's pretty active on Twitter and in the community. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Always happy to be here, Jason.
Yeah. And I always like to start off by asking, how did you get into iOS development?
Yeah, so this is, like I said, like 9 years ago that I'm just like getting into it. And I was working at a restaurant. I was actually doing a lot of different things during this time. But basically I was working at a restaurant, hated it so much that I was trying out all these different jobs. I did a bunch of different sales jobs. And I was actually really good at sales, but I just didn't enjoy it that much. And I ended up stumbling across coding, and I've always grown up like in a technical household. My dad was really big into computers, and I always had this thing about web development in the back of my mind. And eventually I just gave development a shot. Started with web development, couldn't figure out JavaScript, and switched over to mobile development, iOS development. And I would just work and learn coding while I was either at work during the slow hours or at night. And eventually I got to the point to where I was able to release apps and get hired. And essentially the rest is history from there.
Wait, so what because you said you got inspired kind of because you had like some technical background, but what was like the first project or the first code that you wrote out?
Honestly, the first piece of code that I ever probably wrote out, like if you really wanted to be very technical about that statement, would be like when I was 10. I made a website, and I think that it was probably just a local host website. I don't think that we actually published it anywhere. But that was like a long time ago, and I don't really count that as anything professional, because I definitely didn't continue after that. And then I did a couple of things on MySpace, for anybody that can remember MySpace. And then yeah, back in 2014, Swift got announced. I started playing with Swift, but I didn't continue from there. It wasn't until about well, I kind of did. It was like later in 2014, it was later. It was actually in 2015 that I actually learned a lot more about Swift and iOS development, because I went through web development and stuff like that. Didn't like it. Learned iOS development primarily because I liked the idea of like kind of like solving puzzles, because that's all coding is just finding solutions to problems and solving that puzzle. And with iOS development, it is literally, I've been through a lot of different types of development. iOS development is by far the easiest to get into. And the reason for that is because you can follow a tutorial like that is any number of years old, and it will still probably work on your machine if you just follow it step by step, more likely than not. And if you try to do that with Android development or web development, there's always something that's going to be just slightly off. There's going to be some type of broken change, and it's really hard to follow along on those. But the iOS development path is so much easier, and now there's so many more resources out there that just make it so easy to really learn about almost any concept in iOS development and break into this field.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually true. I never really thought about that because if you look into web development, there's always so many dependencies that are always changing and breaking stuff.
Yeah, it's like you can follow along, like let's say you wanted to learn React, right? It's a web framework that most people have heard of. Let's say you wanted to learn React. If you go onto like YouTube, or if you go find an article right now, if you were to follow along step by step, I guarantee you that you're going to probably run into an error that isn't in the tutorial, and it's simply because a dependency has changed yesterday. And you're just going to have to figure that out. And that's a hard hurdle to overcome when you're just starting out, because the amount of places that you may need to look, you might not even be aware of those places.
Yeah, that's really true. And it's pretty interesting that you so you had some like a little knowledge and experience with like programming, but you didn't you never really took the dive until like 2015 or 2016, right?
Yeah, yeah. So that's when I really took the dive. I really because I was in such a bad state. Like every time I went to the restaurant, I felt like this black ball of hate that just I felt inside my chest where I
Yeah.
was just like every time I walked through those doors, like I hated working there. And it was just like I was the hardest worker there. And just being surrounded by people that were just like putting in just like not even the minimum, just like no effort at all is just so frustrating. And yeah, like I wanted to find a way out, and programming, luckily I was lucky enough to find my first opportunity and get a job. And I essentially um I nearly tripled my income with my first job, and I was still underpaid as an iOS developer.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear though. Yeah, I had like a similar thing because I had dabbled with programming before, but I never took the leap. I guess I was probably a little like intimidated by going into tech, right? Because before you become a developer, you kind of well, from what I've seen, you could it's very easy to look at it as something that's you need to be like a genius. You need to like it's a super high level thing that you might not be able to do, um, but it's basically what I noticed. Like I had like a mindset change around the time when I started, and just based on consistency alone, like it was a lot easier to pick up and actually eventually become a developer.
Yeah, so I I don't want to say that being, a developer, a programmer, whatever, I don't want to say like it's the easiest thing in the world, right? You definitely run into a lot of roadblocks, especially when you're starting off. Um, and you still continue to run into roadblocks even no matter what your skill set is, in my opinion. You still run into roadblocks. And when you're just starting off and you're doing this for free and you're just learning by yourself, it can be very frustrating if you're not working on something that you're excited or passionate about. Because when those roadblocks come, you have to have enough willpower and desire to make it to the other side to achieve your goal, or else those roadblocks will pile up and stop you from completing whatever task you're looking to achieve altogether, and it will just stop you. So I know that there's so many aspiring devs that get caught in a roadblock, and if they are not working on the right project, they simply will not proceed to become an actual developer, like a professional developer.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So for you, then the fuel was the hatred of the job.
Well, it was a mix of it was a mix of the hatred of the job. So there was like
Yeah.
I would do almost anything to find something that I enjoyed and got paid well for, to get
Yeah.
out of working at the restaurant. And then the fact that at that time I was an Apple fanboy, and
Mhm.
I loved the idea of being able to show something that I created, that I brought
Mhm.
into existence right there on my phone. And I thought that was like
Yeah.
such a cool little thing to essentially show off to the people around me. Like, oh, look at this app I created.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I had similar. Yeah, that's very true. Because I mean, we all have phones, and especially in the U.S., almost everybody has an iPhone. Well, at least the people I know, everybody uses an iPhone. So when you're able to build something that you can just like use and share with people and show them, it's really dope.
Yeah, I think I saw, like, I don't know if it was like a TikTok or something somewhere, but like essentially that in the US, like almost 60% of the devices are iPhones. So if you're in the States, you're like surrounded by, more likely than not, it's people that if it's people our age, they usually have an
Yeah,
iPhone. And then there are, you still have people that have Android too, but they're the higher end Androids, so it's like a lot
yeah,
of really high end smartphones.
yeah, yeah. I only have one friend that I know of that has an Android, and It's always annoying the green chats.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunately it seems like Android's been making a huge initiative to get Apple to you know work with Android and the messaging standard or something like that,
Hmm.
so that everybody can have a good messaging experience. And I think that there was like a recent update to where Android, I think I saw it like MKBHD like do a video showing that now Android left the ball in Apple's court, that like if an Android user likes or like gives you a thumbs up emoji on your message, now it will like kind of read weird for the iPhone user. So they've been, I've seen like billboards. They've been really pushing for Apple to play along with the messaging.
Oh, I think I have seen that. Like, cause I'm in a family group chat. I'm in. There's some Android users, and I think I've seen some reactions like that.
Yeah.
Oh. So back to your iOS journey. So how did you get like your first job then?
Yeah, so the first time that I kind of worked in like a somewhat professional space was, I was lucky enough to have my dad introduce me to one of his colleagues that was currently building a dating app at the time. And he actually already had a team overseas that was building it out, and then he had somebody that was the middleman that was managing the team. And what he wanted, oh sorry, what he wanted me to do was to he was actually coming to me like more of a consultant, but it was like for free, right? Because this is my dad's friend and I didn't have any experience, and he just kind of wanted me to oversee what was going on. So that was like my first like professional experience, and we didn't really do too much. We only had like, I don't know, like less than 10 meetings, where I was just kind of saying like, oh well, this can be done and design can be updated like this and all kinds of stuff. um and I don't know if that actually attributed to me getting my first job. I think it was the fact that I had put out two like extremely simple apps out into the app store that kind of helped me more than that job experience. Because I had created my first app, which I called Brain Dump, and all it was me learning how to do CRUD operations, create, read, update, and delete in core data. And I just made a basic notes application. You type something in, you hit save, it saves, and then you can go and see the other notes that you've
Yeah.
saved in the past. The second app that I made was, I remember this. I made this app in a single afternoon, and it was less than 70 lines of code. And all it did was show your text. It was just a giant text field, and in large text, you would just write in whatever you want, and it was called Easy Read. And I actually made this with purpose because my late great grandfather, he was hard of hearing and he was in the hospital, and I wanted to communicate with him without like yelling at him the entire time. So I ended up actually writing out these messages and then holding it up so that he can read it, because every time I was yelling at him, he still couldn't really make out what I was saying. So I ended up putting that one out on the App Store as well. And then since I have like this obsession, whenever I'm interested about something, I get obsessed and I just keep going, and I'll lose sleep over it. I was obsessed about iOS development and trying to find a job. And I was like up at like 2 in the morning looking at meetup.com. Meetup.com was still a big thing back then. This is pre-COVID, right? And I went to they had like boards that you can post on, like posting boards, which most people don't aren't even familiar with that, and I wasn't even familiar with that. But I was just like messing around looking, and I found somebody that said, oh, we're looking for an iOS developer. I responded to that. The next morning I got a phone call and set it up, and it turned out to be a startup. And we had a little meeting at a Starbucks a couple of days later, and they ended up hiring me for the job, just based off of the things that I said and the experience that I said that I had.
Oh wow. Damn. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's yeah, yeah, you don't hear that. Dang. So a job like a posting on meetup.com basically?
Yeah, it was like and it wasn't even like an official posting. It was like there was a job board where on one of the specific meetup groups, I think, and that I happen to attend regularly, and I happened to just see it because it wasn't a feature that I was even aware of, and I responded to that job to that information because it was just like a post. It wasn't like a job listing like on one of these job listing sites.
Wow, so and then so you just like responded and then they said let's meet tomorrow? Or
I don't think it was like tomorrow. I think they called
yeah.
me the next day, but I think it was like a couple
Oh.
days after that. But yeah, it was relatively short, like because it was just two people essentially, and they had already had a team that they
Oh.
were working with overseas,
Mhm.
but the team wasn't delivering. So um yeah, like at that time back then, I think that there was a lot of that actually going on. Teams overseas were being contracted but weren't able to deliver for whatever reason. The longer I've been in
Mhm.
this field, the more I hear about people hiring overseas and having, relatively good experiences. But at that time, I heard a lot of negative about it. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was just like they were going through a hard time. They didn't like that team. They wanted to get rid of them
Mhm.
and bring me on to take over the code base. So unfortunately, when I was hired on, I was already into this existing code base, which was just an absolute mess and a nightmare of a code base to work in. And
Mhm.
I really asked to refactor and rewrite a lot of it, and it was like a no. And it was just like work with what's there. And boy, did that teach me a whole lot to just being forced to work with what existing crappy code base existed.
Yeah. Damn. No, that's crazy. So in that process, did like what was like the interview like for you? Like when they sat down
So
and talked.
so that interview, like I said, it was extremely informal, and this was a startup. So this was a person that had their own money that was backing the project. It was more of a passion project because they were
Mhm.
very well off. They were not depending on this project to actually be profitable. They just had this idea. They wanted to bring it to life, and they were willing
Mhm.
to fund it. So it was just two people. It was the CEO or the founder, and then it was the person that became my salesman, not my salesman, my manager,
Mhm.
the technical manager, I guess. So I was working there, and it's interesting what you don't know when you get into this industry because my manager, my manager that I ended up working with, it turned out that he was um, encouraging me to do, and I still have a good relationship with this guy, so I'm not like trying to say anything really bad about him, but the way that he wanted things implemented and done, a lot of them should have been done on the back end, and I ended up having to figure out a way to implement them on the front end on the iOS app. And again, it teaches you a lot when you're forced to do stuff in the wrong way. Like you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to do something a specific way, and
Mhm.
when you're forced to find out a different way to implement it, it definitely teaches you how to become more resourceful and more creative in your solutions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And something interesting about like the this whole opportunity that you ended up with like your first role is something I've noticed is like it's more about being at the right place at the right time than it is about just like applying it like anywhere. It's just you're at the right place at the right time and boom, like you get a role or you get an
Yeah,
offer.
so I will say like it that wasn't like the only place that I applied for and I got lucky.
Mhm.
I had applied for a lot of different jobs at that point. Excuse me. I had applied for a lot of different jobs. I only got a couple of interviews. I didn't make it past a couple of phones, like yeah, I think I actually didn't make it past a couple of phone screenings, and it was just simply because I didn't even understand what they were asking for. And like to this day I still don't understand what they were asking for. They were asking about my like workflow or something like that, and I think they wanted to hear something about like agile or something like that. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I told them that I work with Trello, but I don't know. It was a very interesting. I still look back on a lot of these things that haunt me to this day, and I'm just like, I still don't get what you were after. I don't know how I could have done that better. But yeah, I did apply to a lot of different places. I took the official route, and yeah, like I still have not had any success going through the front door. Like the front door, and
Yeah.
what I mean by the front door is like there's the careers page at the bottom of any like company's website. Clicking on that, applying through a job like that, I have not had any success getting um an opportunity through those routes. So it is very important to network and see who you know that may be able to help you with an opportunity. That's always been my case. I've been kind of lucky because I've been able to build up an audience over so many years that um, usually I can ask somebody to help get my resume at least put in front of HR so that I can get a call. And that's still kind of happening today because right now I'm currently looking for a job. And
Mhm.
yeah, the front door is still not, it still doesn't really seem like a viable option to me. Um, I'm better off just asking somebody that I know that works at a company to help push my resume through.
Yeah. Yeah, that I've had a similar experience, and yeah, from what I've seen working with other people, yeah, it's tough because there's like these people, these job postings get like 100 plus applications, some
Yeah, so
500.
so because I've worked I've I've worked around the hiring process before. And I've even done interviews when I was working at AWS as well.
Mhm.
And the way that candidates are screened, because there's so many, the first round is usually screened through like automation, right?
Yeah,
Like there's a
ATS, I
script
think
that
they call it.
that yeah, there's different ways, there's different technologies that can do it. Like either there's a script that's written in house, or you can have an entire technology that's dedicated to doing that screening process for you. And it has to go through this to even make it to like the depending on the company size, like maybe like internal recruiter or HR or whoever. But essentially it
Mhm.
has to get screened by like a, a non-human. Then it goes to a human, and then they look at it, and that's when you may get a screening call. Most people will pass the screening calls. They're just checking to make sure that you're not a psychopath that's going to say something weird. Like you understand that this is an important
Yeah.
call and that you're not like cussing or something like weird. Right.
Yeah.
So most people should make it past a phone screening because it's usually non-technical. If you're applying for a big company, it's just a talking interview.
Mhm.
And then after that, if you make it past that phone screening, that's when you are usually interacting with somebody that has more technical experience.
Yeah, and in your journey becoming a developer, what's been like your biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise. Hmm. Um, I don't know. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe you can help me understand like what was your biggest
Wait.
surprise, and then I
Um.
could like maybe give an example based off of that
Ah.
because I can't really just
Well,
think of one
yeah.
off the top of my head. Biggest surprise.
Um. One interesting surprise is I didn't like when I yeah, when I became a developer, I ended up at like a very big like financial services company, and I didn't realize they're like I thought. being a developer would always be like working on code, working on code. But I didn't realize like sometimes depending on like the company or the position, there's different what do you call it? Like there's different activities or things you may be doing
Oh,
than
okay.
that.
Yeah, so I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've had that experience too. Um, so you're essentially referring to like the idea that a senior principal or even a staff developer actually doesn't write a whole lot of code, right? And it's actually the juniors and the mid-level developers that tend to write the majority of the code base. And actually, as the farther that you go up in the ranks, you end up writing a lot less code. And it's not because you even want to write less code, it's because those positions are expected to um, kind of have a stronger understanding of the business and what the business needs are, and then enforce that in a code style through delegation, through rallying the team. Is that kind of like what you were saying?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I've seen the same thing where it's like I've seen like our top iOS engineer sitting in meetings all day, like not writing a single line of code, and then they may or may not end up saying like after hours just to get some work done because everybody's finally out of the office, which is crazy. Um, I think my biggest surprise was that, and I'm not going to say which company it was, but my biggest surprise is that shortcuts are actually taken a lot more often than you might think. Like storing the store, like for example, storing sensitive data in a giant sheet. Like I can't remember if it was like an Excel sheet or a what, but it was like stored in a
Yeah.
sheet that could just be grabbed by practically anybody. And that was like, what is going on?
Yeah, I guess sometimes you got to make some trade-offs,
I was
you
just
know?
like, whoa. Like this is definitely not best practices. I mean,
Mhm.
I definitely was not strong, like I did not have a strong business background or anything like that, but yeah, that was just a big shocker to me.
Yeah. All right. Oh, one thing I've seen you talk about recently is the Vision Pro, and everyone's kind of been talking about it, right? The Vision Pro.
Oh yeah, so Apple Vision Pro?
Yeah, the Apple
Yeah.
Vision Pro. Um, I see you had some interesting thoughts on it. What are your thoughts on the Vision Pro?
So my thoughts are like, to be blunt, like I don't think it's it's I don't think that the value is there for the price point. Apple is notorious for having overpriced products. Um,
Mm.
it took a long time before like Android phones, like the top end Android phones, were even priced at the same price as iPhones, and things of that nature. But here we go with like another overpriced Apple product, and I don't think that it can actually deliver on the the difference in. I don't believe the value is there. So like the headset that I'm most familiar with is the Meta Quest 2
Mm.
actually, but there's a 3 now, and that one goes for
Mm.
like $500 if you wanted to buy a headset for $500. Amazing experience, absolutely awesome to watch movies on, and a lot of really great games on it. All of that is going to be improved by the Apple Vision Pro, like without a doubt. But it's priced out such a large portion of the market to where it's only businesses and developers and then tech enthusiasts that are really buying this thing, and it's most likely going to be an Apple tech enthusiast. So
Yeah.
the market for the Apple Vision Pro specifically is a very small market. So I don't even believe that a lot of the developers that bought this thing are going to be able to recoup their losses if it was just a business move. I don't think that this is a good business investment for most people. The people that I think that it's best for are players that are already in that space, that already have an app for other headsets like the Meta Quest, the Meta Quest series, and maybe like some game developers that can port their Unity or Unreal projects over to this platform simply. But I don't think that anybody that's diving deep into AR kit, reality kit, I don't think these are going to be the biggest apps. Apple will definitely highlight them. I know that when there's the Apple App Awards for the Vision Pro,
Mm.
those apps will be highlighted. There will definitely be a chance to make a good amount of money if you were one of those first people, but I really don't see like there being a huge market for the Pro right now. Maybe when there's an Air, I think it'll definitely become much more much a much more uh consumer friendly product.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's probably not gonna be the next iPhone, at least not yet.
No, definitely not yet. I mean, like people are talking about, oh, well, this can be like my workstation, and it's like, well, keep in mind that you still need to have your laptop or your Mac or whatever right next to you, right? Like you're not going to be able to run Xcode on your headset, right? On your Apple Vision Pro. If we're not
Mm.
getting it for iPad, we're not getting it for Apple Vision Pro, right? So that's one. Two, like if you're not if you're not or like if you've watched how well the other platforms do outside of iPhone, like that there isn't necessarily a huge market, like it's kind of like set it and forget it type mentality on some of these, like for tvOS. Like how many people are downloading new apps
Yeah,
for their tvOS, how many people are
yeah,
downloading apps for Apple Watch, just standalone apps, right? Like not like you know
companion.
companion apps, right, to
Yeah.
an existing app. And HomePod, like there was so much promise for the HomePod, and that doesn't really
Mm.
seem to have taken off. Even like iPad OS, it's like a lot of the times in the community, I get the sense that a lot of people still only develop for iPhone and they don't develop for iPad OS. Like a lot of people still only develop for iPhone vertically, like landscape, or I mean for portrait, not
Okay. Yeah.
landscape, right? So it's like if you take all these things into consideration, I just don't see it being as big as as what some of the enthusiasts about it are. I have no doubt in the experience that it provides. I just don't think that the value is there though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I have a similar kind of opinion. I think it's not gonna be a big splash, at least not yet. I mean, people will buy it, like the tech enthusiasts, the developers, and I think probably take maybe at least like 5 years of iteration and tweaking,
Yeah, and
to
then you
even
have the
potentially be mass market. Because people got to decide if yeah, I guess everybody has to decide: are we gonna be rocking like headsets? What's it like? More than an hour a day, or a few hours a day?
yeah. Yeah, that was like the interesting thing that it has like the cord to the battery pack, which just I it's just not the way that I thought Apple would implement something.
Mm.
It's really bulky in my opinion.
Yeah,
And yeah, it's just like you have a lot of these companies that are saying that it's not going to be worth the investment right now, like Netflix. So Netflix, like this, I think it was the CEO or somebody high at Netflix that's making decisions, said that there won't be an Apple Vision Pro Netflix app, at least not at launch and probably not in 2024, because the market is too small for the return on investment. So like
yeah,
investing all of this money to give a stellar experience of watching Netflix on the Apple Vision Pro is like there's not enough people, there's not enough
Yeah.
customers that are willing
Yeah.
to
The
even
demand isn't there.
invest
Yeah.
into it, right? So like maybe in the future when the Apple Vision Air or Light or whatever, just the Apple
Yeah.
Vision, right, comes out and it's at an affordable price point, more people are
Mm.
buying it, and then Netflix can come up with a strategy to, increase, like, oh, if you get their $30 subscription, now you can have, an immersed subscription package to where you can watch movies in this immersive experience or whatever it is. But yeah, when you get an Apple Vision Pro, you're gonna have to watch your movies from Safari at launch.
Wait. So you didn't think about getting one?
No, I mean, I also didn't go to a lab and try it out, so
Yeah.
like I didn't give it a fair opportunity to blow me away. But like at $3,500, like that's a sizable purchase. And
Yes.
like if I
It's,
know that this is the type of device that I will be stoked to have for about 2 weeks, and then after that it's just going to start sitting inside of a drawer somewhere, and that's just how that's how it will be for me, because I know I'm not gonna want to deal with charging it every 2 hours. I know that my setup, I currently have like a 3 screen setup, and I still only use like two at a time. Like I don't need like all these different windows and things like that. It's
yeah.
not worth it to me.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
just my use case.
Yeah. That seems appealing, like, about the Vision Pro, like having the whole workstation, but at the same time, it's maybe just like just a thought and not really in reality. You probably wouldn't want that much. All you need is like just one or two screens.
Yeah. I think that what they're doing with capturing hand gestures is actually extremely amazing. And I feel like that's the most innovative piece. Like I
And
understand that it's made with all these amazing materials, the engine, like the manufacturing process is amazing, sure. I understand that it has a smaller form factor than probably the other headsets out there, sure. Probably better optical like resolution or whatever, sure. But
mm,
like like none of that stuff actually matters to me. Because even when you would use like an older MetaQuest with like subpar graphics, it's still immersive. The fact that
mm,
the fact that everything around you is kind of moving is enough to immerse your brain into believing like, oh, this is actually kind of happening to you.
mm,
um so you don't need high quality graphics in order to be immersed into an environment. Obviously the more realistic the better. But
yeah,
yeah, where I think the Apple Vision Pro really stands out is the capturing of hand gestures, and leading us to be like one step closer to actually being completely immersed, where you maybe have eventually these haptic feedback suits where you're able to wear like a vest or
yeah,
whatever, and then you're truly in Ready Player One territory.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That'll be interesting. That'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I
I
believe
didn't.
we'll get there eventually, but like not in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't think about purchasing the Vision Pro yet, or not even yet. I don't think I will. Yeah, 3.5K seems like a hefty investment.
Yeah,
Hefty investment.
I mean, it's more than most people's laptops,
Yeah,
right? So it's a big investment.
yeah. All right. The last thing I always like to hit on is so what advice would you have for an aspiring iOS developer in today's market in 2024?
Yeah. So, I kind of said before that um if you boil it down, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. in order to get hired. Like if the goal is to get hired, um it's about who you know and how you can,
Mm.
get that step into the door, or get your foot in the door. And I would strongly recommend that you start creating content in some capacity. I truly feel like this has propelled my career, like my skill sets forward in my career, and has opened up a lot of opportunities that I would not otherwise have had. Um, I'm sure, Jason, like with the community that you've been building, the fact that you have content out there, that you getting a job um recently, uh
Mm.
that community kind of helped, whether it was directly or indirectly. Because if it's
Yeah.
directly, then it's somebody that reached out to you, or that that you can reach out to. Or it was indirect, where it's like, hey, look at this portfolio that says, hey, I know what the heck I'm doing because I teach thousands of people how to do it.
Yeah.
So I would definitely recommend creating content in some capacity, whether that be videos or articles or something that's public. Even building in public on maybe X, learning in public, I should say, is could be definitely valuable. And the other reason why I say that is because there's so many times where I go back and watch like a 3-year-old video of mine, and because I simply don't memorize all this information. I learn how to do it once, I make a video up about it, and then I go back and I reference it later if I need it. So just having something that you can go back to, like, oh, I know that I wrote an article about that. Oh, I know I did a video about that. Like, oh, let me go check how I did it then, and then use that as a reference, because then I could get back into the same thinking space and apply all the new concepts that I know about it to what I'm working on now.
Yeah, it's really great advice, to be honest. Yeah, yeah, because who you know is definitely, for what I've seen in my experience, is definitely a huge factor and a lot more the best route, to be honest, than going trying to go through the front door when applying.
Yeah, agreed.
And one thing you mentioned that I didn't get to ask you is how did you get into content creation?
Oh, I always kind of wanted to be a YouTuber, honestly.
Yeah.
So like I actually came to this like self-realization like a couple years ago, that the real reason why I got into content creation and I wanted to become a YouTuber was because growing up I always I I wasn't like alone as a kid. Like I always had friends, but I never had anybody that was interested in the same things that I was interested about. And
Mhm.
what I realized about myself is that I was looking to make friends that liked all the same things as much as I liked them. And I was
Mhm.
trying to find that. So that was actually, it took a while to realize that, but that was like the core seed of what caused me to get into content creation through YouTube. Why I specifically chose YouTube was because I'm more of an auditory learner, so I learn through hearing, um, and I generally don't like reading. I don't retain. I have bad reading comprehension. I don't retain information through reading. So, like going through the docs, unless it's just like code snippets, doesn't help me. When you're explaining a concept through paragraphs, like it doesn't help me. Understanding concepts that are spoken to me, I can understand them a lot better and internalize them a lot better. So that's kind of why I chose video creation. But a lot of people aren't comfortable with video, so I'd recommend just writing articles and yeah, just
Yeah.
document what you're learning.
Oh, that's pretty dope. I haven't thought about why I started the YouTube channel, although
It's
before.
interesting. Think about it.
Yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
take the time to think about like why did you do this? Because a lot of the times it's like, oh well, there's a lot to gain, right? There's like the very
Yeah.
visible things like, oh well, I gain reputation, I could get hired anywhere, whatever. I have all this stuff that I have, like essentially this massive
Yeah.
portfolio on YouTube, right? But like take a step back and think about like what is the deep seated reason for content creation. And it's like it's like it's usually it doesn't actually have to do with money
Yeah.
or the job or anything. It has something to do with something
Yeah.
that's deeper, much deeper than that.
Yeah. It'll turn into a therapy session. I'm thinking about it now, but I know part of the reason is so around that time or before that, like I was always doing content creation stuff with my friends. Like we had a podcast, we had like a YouTube channel, and then I transitioned into learning iOS, and I got into programming like through YouTube and stuff like that. So that kind of inspired me to just get started and for like basically share what I have learned and done.
Yeah, and I think that you'll agree that it was a great decision that you made.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah. It's and it's crazy how like I've been able to like just keep consistently keep going at it, and just after time, um, it progressively like it gets better, and like I guess you see some results. Which I mean, I don't do it for the results per se, but it's always nice to see results.
Yeah. Yeah, that's if you're going to do the content creation, I would definitely say do not do it for the results because especially if you're like teaching something. So like tutorials, they do not get views. They don't rank very well. Um, they are great for evergreen content. So like over several years, your videos may amass like tens of thousands of views, but that's over years. Like the tutorial market is like it's an evergreen space. It's for search. It's designed to help people that are searching for stuff. It's not designed to make it to the front page of YouTube, because if it's a tutorial, it's not necessarily entertaining, and entertaining stuff is what gets more watch time on YouTube. So just keep that in mind.
Should have been TikTokers then.
Yeah.
I'm
Doing
joking.
dances for code.
Yeah. All right, Kilo. It was really nice speaking with you. Thank you again for coming on the show. Where can the people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on X and on YouTube at Kilo underscore Loco. That's Kilo underscore
Mhm.
LOCO.
Hmm. All right. Oh wait, where did you get the inspiration for that name?
That one's a deep cut. So it turns out that my grandma, she's Colombian. English was not her first language,
Mm.
and she would always spell my name different. Kylokile. One time it was Kilo. So
Uh,
my uncles and my aunt used to start calling me Kilo. And then on Xbox, I was like, this was at Xbox 360 times. I wanted it to be two words, Kilo, and then something that matched with my last initial L. So I wanted it to be Kilo Loco, and I was like, well, that represents my Hispanic heritage as well. So I'll keep that Kilo Loco, and it's been that way since Xbox
yeah.
360 times. And yeah, Kilo Loco is a lot easier to find than Kyle Lee, and most people
Yeah.
don't expect me when they look for a Kyle Lee.
Yeah. That's true. All right. All right. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Later.